Hi class, another quick hurricane review video from chapter 11. So we have this picture here, and it's showing some destruction caused by a strong Category 4 hurricane. Which one of the three basic classes of damage was most likely responsible? So what are our different options for our classes of damage? We could have wind-related damage, we can have flooding, and we can have the storm surge. Now, let's think about what we've got going on here. So we can see the coastline is visible off in the distance, and the damage is pretty extensive. And so we would most likely say that this is from the storm surge. And remember, the storm surge is responsible for 90% of all hurricane-caused deaths. It's a big dome of water that slams into the coastline as the hurricane makes landfall. It's not like a giant tidal wave that we think, you imagine this big wave crashing in. It's more of a gradual, but it can actually be pretty fast rise in the water. Here, I have a better diagram. So here's what our normal tide height would be, and if we go above that, that's what we measure the storm surge. So if we are already at a high tide for that time of year, we can have a lot more damage. So the storm surge rises above the normal high tide, and then we can also have big waves imposed on that because they're wind-driven waves. And so the cause of the storm surge is because there are two things. The more minor reason is that the hurricane is a low-pressure system, and if you have low pressure, then that water will rise up into that low pressure. And then the other is you have all that wind like pushing this big mound of water ahead of it onto shore, and it can cause pretty severe destruction. Just a quick example, I got to go down to the Mississippi Gulf Coast a month after Hurricane Katrina. So this was October 3rd. Katrina made landfall on August 29th, 2005. So this is just over a month afterward. And this is a school on the coast. The Gulf of Mexico is right over here on the right. This was a pedestrian walkway over the coastal highway. And you can see there's debris caught in the fencing at a height of about 28 feet above the ground. So the storm surge from Hurricane Katrina is about 25 to 30 feet in this area, and we estimated about 28 feet here at Bay St. Louis. And just to give you an idea of where that is, here's Hurricane Katrina. Remember, it's rotating in its counterclockwise direction. Let me get a pen up here. There we go. So rotating counterclockwise as it makes landfall. Oh, and it's kind of tracking like this. As it makes landfall, the most intense winds and storm surge are going to be the east of the eye and a little bit less intense west of the eye. And Bay St. Louis and Waveland, which I'll show you some pictures of, is right about there. And the eye actually tracked right over them. And so they were a little to the east, so they got the most intense of the storm surge and the most intense of the winds. Now, your textbook says that storm surges are 40 to 50 miles wide. For Katrina, the storm surge was actually much bigger than that. Katrina was a very large and very intense storms. Large storms are not necessarily more intense. Small storms can be very compact and very intense. So there's not really any correlation necessarily between size and intensity. But Katrina happened to be both a large storm and a very intense storm. So just to give you some idea of the kinds of devastation we see from the storm surge, this is the railroad tracks. It's about a half mile. The Gulf is about a half mile to the left of this photo. Interestingly, the railroad tracks protected a lot of the homes to the east because it sort of dampened the effect of the storm surge. But normally, there aren't houses on railroad tracks. This is that view of this section right here, where it got washed out underneath the railroad tracks. And this is the little town of Waveland, Mississippi, just west of Bay St. Louis. This is a photo before, so from 1998. You can see all the houses. And then this is after, and then this is a ground view panorama that I took, and we'll just scroll through it from the center. This was the center of town of Waveland, Mississippi, and then if we look to the left, you can see there's really not much left. Pretty much in that half mile between the coast and the railroad tracks, almost no structures survived at all. And what's left behind are piles of debris. Now, I was here, like I said, a month after the storm, and so the streets were cleaned. You could actually get around. There'd been quite a bit of cleanup done, but just, gives you an idea of the amount of devastation that a storm surge can cause. One of the most devastating aspects of hurricanes when they make landfall. Great. Let me know if you have any questions.